All right, so we're going to talk, this will be pretty short, about amending the Constitution. All right, so it's one of the oldest written constitutions, but it's also very short. It's not huge and long. It's not a giant 3,000-page book or anything. And the process for amending it is not very easy, but the framers did that on purpose. They wanted it to be hard. It's only been amended 27 times. There's a little chart down at the bottom about how that happens, and we'll talk more really in depth in class, and you're going to have to, copy the chart in your spirals and do all kinds of things. So you'll be well familiar with how this is accomplished when we get all done with it. All right, so the first step is a formal proposal of an amendment. You see your little friend Bill on the hill down there from when you were in elementary school. So you get this formally proposed, and that can either be done in Congress in Washington, D.C., with 2/3 of a vote. So that's in Congress, 2/3, vote can be done there. Or 2/3 of the state legislatures can call a convention to propose an amendment. So this has never, ever been done in the history of the country. Now, there's been a lot of talk about doing it within the last 4 or 5 years, and it has been concerning term limits on people, on congressmen and senators. They don't have term limits. You know how the president is, you elect him twice and he's done. Well, with senators and congressmen, they can keep being reelected and keep being reelected, and some of them are. Some of them are there forever and ever. And there's a lot of people in our country that feel like it would be better if those people had some term limits on them. But of course, if you wait for these people to propose their own term limits on themselves, that's not going to happen. And so some of these people have been, in the last, I'd say 5 or 6 years, they've been talking about the state legislatures getting together and calling a convention. But notice it has to be 2/3 of them. So an awful lot of people have to care an awful lot about something in order for this to happen. It's not an easy threshold. All right, the next step. Now, once this thing is proposed, it has to be approved by everyone. So you get 2/3 of the people in Congress, or 2/3 of the states to have a convention and say, we want to put this out to everybody. It has to be approved by everyone, ratified. The ratification approval is higher, it's 3/4 of the people. So 3/4 of us all, at that point, we have to all approve it. It will come out to vote for the states. All the states have to vote on it individually. It would be probably like when we would go to vote for president in the fall, or like we have congressional elections and we all go vote on those every couple of years. That would also be on the ballot. It would be United States Amendment number whatever, and that would be on the ballot, okay? But notice it takes a higher percentage to ratify than to propose. Because again, the founders want to make this difficult. They don't want the Constitution amended just with a drop of a hat. They want this to be very hard because they want people to have to think about it a long time, and they want people to have to work really hard to get there. It's got to be something people care about an awful lot. All right, so there's some implied powers in the Constitution. And formal amendments are just one way that the Constitution has changed. Over the years, Congress has claimed for itself certain powers that are suggested but not stated, and that's in that elastic clause. And that's where it comes from, in the elastic clause, because if the elastic clause says Congress can do whatever is proper and necessary for the running of the country, well, that could be a whole lot of things. An awful lot of things could fall under that umbrella as something that's good for the running of the country. So let's look at some of those things. Okay, one of the things that's in there is in the Commerce Clause. And it says that Congress has the power to regulate commerce. This means trade. Trade between foreign nations and trade between the states. And it's used this Commerce Clause to grab power and regulate things such as television and the internet. So even though television and the internet, you can see it, like internet shopping, yes, but some of the things about the internet, you would think, well, why would they have their hands on this? Because it doesn't have anything to do with commerce. So again, they've used that elastic clause to say, well, we can then tell you what the content of your television has to be, what the content of your radio programs have to be, what is allowable on the internet and is not. And there was a big fight about this just recently, about the government getting more control even over the internet, which, some people like it and some people don't. The people who do want more control are on the side of, well, the internet is a wild, like the Wild West. I mean, there's bad things on there, and you guys know that. Your parents have told you. You've been to probably programs where they've told you the bad things on the internet. You don't have to be too imaginative to understand that there's bad stuff there, and that you probably shouldn't go to those sites. That's not a thing you want to go to. You don't want to have anything to do with that. And then, so there's people that say the government should regulate that. That should be shut down. And then there's the other side of the thinking is that, well, it's the very last place in the universe where the government isn't very much involved, and the very last real bastion of free speech. So there's two sides to that. Like, I try to show you two sides of everything. And probably the correct way of thinking is someplace in between. This was especially a big deal a while back with there was a terrorist attack, and they wanted to, they're trying to shut down some of this terrorist communication on the internet. And so, again, in my own household, we've got one person saying, well, the government should, if there's anybody, talking terrorist stuff on the internet, they should shut that down. And so then, but I was playing devil's advocate because that's all I was doing, I promise. I'm like, but who are they? Who are they that's going to decide what is terrorism and what isn't? So you see, there's a problem here. You have to then, it's a fine line you have to walk when you're deciding about regulating something like television. When it's a communication medium, when you're communicating over a medium, television, radio, internet, telephones, your phones, then it becomes a question that you have to really, really think hard about.